Much coffee today.
Welcome into our Osceola studio and welcome to Seminole Sidelines. It was another stress-free Saturday for Florida State fans. Kind of getting used to this. No Florida State games to cover, and we can watch all the games we want with our remote controls on Saturday. That will change very soon as BC is coming up here, though. But it was a fun Friday night, stressful Friday night in Louisville for Pat Burnham and our crew from the Osceola who were up there covering it. A 35-31 win that went down to the wire. Lots of things that you had to like on offense, defense, and special teams. I think my biggest takeaway is this team looks, feels, practices, plays like a year 3 program. You're seeing them battle adversity at every turn, battling the injuries, and coming out with a big win.
Yeah, we said before the season started that we thought this would be a fun team to watch, a team that showed grit and liked to play together. And boy, the first 2 weeks of the season, our last two games coming down to the last player drive, defending comebacks from the opposition, LSU and Louisville. Mike Norvell mentioned this was a response game for his team after LSU. We wanted to see how they responded to that win, how they would go into this game. And obviously they came out, played very hard. They actually started off the game beautifully, a 3-and-out by Louisville in the first drive. FSU takes over the ball and scores. But what we learned about the response was more so within that game, right? It didn't necessarily was how they responded to LSU. It was how they responded to the adversity they had faced against Louisville. It was overcame some shortcomings in all 3 phases of the game. You mentioned injuries, but what we learned about this football team is that it has resolve and it has conviction. And it seems just like 2 years ago, and Mark's been on almost every one of these Seminole sidelines. And, a couple of years ago, we were worried about having teams that competed. This team will compete. We do know that. Now, there are a lot of questions we can work off of, but this Louisville win validated the LSU win, showed that this team not only can deal with success, but can deal with in the game. We learned that they can deal with diversity. And listen, 35-31, it was an imperfect game, but continued FSU's perfect start to the 2022 season.
They are 3-0 for the first time since 2015. Good shot to go 4-0 when they play BC Saturday night. That's going to be 8 p.m. on the ACC network. We've got our Osceola football analysts joining us on Zoom. We're going to talk about Florida State Louisville with Mark Salva and Charlie Ward. Gentlemen, we appreciate you for joining us. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, guys, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your Sunday night to join us. Listen, Mark, you were with us at the game. I want to thank you for that. We had a good time. It's been a long time since you and I had seen each other. Of course, you got to catch up with a lot of familiar faces. But Charlie, we'll start with you. What was your overall assessment of the game? And we'll kind of dig into the details as we move forward. But what did you see that you liked out of this from this team against Louisville?
Very much a lot of things that you guys have talked about, just the resolve, the resiliency of being able to overcome mistakes and injuries and all those different types of things, and guys stepping up and making plays. When it's all said and done, that is the main goal and focus of winning. You're going to have adversity throughout a game. It's how do you respond to that adversity? And on offense, we saw the run game. JT went down, and then defensively, you saw them in the fourth quarter start to make it tougher for Malik Cunningham to get out of the pocket and made him throw from the pocket. And then we were able to get some good stops, stop on fourth down. Then, of course, at the end of the game, we got the INT from Kevin Knowles. But there's a lot of things you can work on, especially the kicking game being one. And defensively, the run game, making sure the run defense is shored up. But I was impressed, very excited that we won the game for sure.
So, Charlie, this is the first time we've had you on that I've been hosting one of these shows. Just overall, 3 games into this season, how has this team performed based on what you thought might be how they might perform coming into the season?
Well, they had high expectations, and I got an opportunity to go and speak with the team. And one of the things the coaches were really raving about was the competitive depth. And I know that's one of the things I know I've talked about before. Is this year we have depth, meaning if one guy goes down, another guy can step up and be just as effective as the guy who's starting. And so that plays a big part in how you're able to overcome those injuries and adversity throughout the course of the game. And that's showing itself now. We have offensive linemen out, and we shift the guys around, and they've done a pretty good job of holding the fort. But the great thing about it is last year this time we were 0-3. This year this time we're 3-0, and we lost a lot of the same type games last year that we're winning this year. And so I just think it's another year in the system, another great recruiting class, guys they brought in fitting the part to be able to help us be successful.
Mark, obviously Charlie alluded to it. This is a bottom line business, and you mentioned that in our first impressions that we videotaped right after the game. Just kind of your overall assessment of the game, what you saw from the team that you liked, and obviously as we move further down the show, we'll talk a little bit about things they need to get corrected for Boston College. But just Mark, your overall assessments on the game, and we'll dig into the details as Charlie mentioned with depth, and we'll get into a little bit of Jordan Travis and Tate Rodemaker here in a second.
I mean, overall, Pat, I remember looking at you when the clock ran down for halftime, looking at you and just said, we got to have to gut this one out if we're going to win this game, right? And that's exactly what they did. What gave me great hope that this team's culture had absolutely changed is when we came out in the second half and went down the field and scored in that first drive. When we pulled that off, I knew we had a chance to win the game, because up to that point, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was unsure, with the injuries that were piling up, obviously the way Tate looked at the end of the half, and all those things, it was a major gut check, and the way the defense had played up to that point, it was a major gut check in the second half. And the fact that they pulled it off, they did what they needed to do. They made the plays that they needed to make. To me, speaks volumes about the culture that we have on this team. It speaks to me about, like Charlie mentioned, the depth we have across the board, and the playmakers. That's something that had been missing, especially on the outside. This week it was Johnny Wilson. Last week it was Pokey. The running backs. I mean, amazing. So we have playmakers, and we have resilience, and we have a culture now that won't quit. And that's what I came out of this game with.
Yeah, the supporting cast around both quarterbacks honestly has been really, really good the last couple of games. I think that's made life for the quarterbacks just a bit easier. I know everybody's asking injury updates on Jordan Travis and other guys. I'll just say this from the start. We don't have concrete updates. Jordan Travis has posted on Twitter something that we would take to say very positive. He says, "Great news, let's get it." That probably means he's coming back sooner rather than later, right. But we don't have a true timeline here. I think we need to say we just don't have firm updates. We won't get them until Monday when Mike Norvell talks to the media. But this is very, very positive as you move forward.
Right. It was a cryptic tweet, but obviously he was, whatever news he got, he was ecstatic to get. My read into that is he was worried it was a break. It was probably a sprain. We'll have updates on Jared Verse and hopefully Fabian Lovett, Jordan Travis, Robert Scott, and even Amari and Cooper, who did not look healthy in the game, played sparingly, but we'll have more information from that from Coach Norvell on Monday, and we'll be able to update you then. But obviously, we want to start with the offensive side of the ball, guys. This was a game that was quarterback heavy as far as success of both teams. Charlie, want to start with you. Obviously, Jordan Travis got off to a terrific start in the first quarter, 11 of 11, had a touchdown. 2 of 6 in the second quarter. Just talk about your thoughts on his performance until he got hurt, and then we'll move into a little bit of your thoughts on Tate.
With Jordan, was very excited about the game plan. I got an opportunity to kind of text him, and he was very excited about the game plan, and it showed. When you have a game plan and you go out and execute, especially early on, it just shows that you prepared yourself, the team's prepared, and they know what's going on. And when you can go and throw no incompleted passes, it means that you're locked in. And so it was just unfortunate for him in the second quarter that he got injured, but he got us off to a great start. And that's one of the things that you want to see from your offense is you want to be able to run the football and be able to throw it and have that balance. And we were able to do that early on in that game. And then once Tate got in, of course, he was a little erratic, but that's kind of to be expected because he got thrown into the fire, in the second quarter after injury. But he settled down and showed us what he's been doing in practice for quite some time now. And one of the things that Coach Norvell talked to me about earlier in the preseason when I went out to see him practice was he felt very confident in Tate, running a team, being successful. And we see why. After the game in Louisville, he was able to keep his composure, but I thought they did a masterful job of protecting him in a lot of ways and giving him the throws that he needed, that it didn't take too much of a read. And they leaned on the running game. Whenever they handed the ball off to any of the backs, they were very successful. And that brought safeties up. And then we started to see the RPO game, and we hit them for a couple of post routes. And so I think eventually they'll open it up to where he can do a little bit more. But they're going to run the football. I mean, that's what we got to hang our hat on. We got 3 dynamic backs. And once you give them the football, I like to see them give them the football in the passing game as well, because they're very dynamic when they have the ball in their hands. But right now, they're selling for giving it to them, handing it to them. But they're doing a great job. And I think that's where, if Tate is there, he's going to have to, they're going to have to continue to massage that run game a little bit more to open up that passing game.
Yeah, and this is where resolve comebacks in. Speaking of Tate, after some less than stellar performances and some brief previous experiences, he could have wilted Mark after that bad interception in the second quarter. Instead, he came out and led the team to a opening scoring drive in the second half to tie the game. And I've been a proponent of people have rushed to judgment on Tate. They've been too quick to pull the trigger. He's
me, by the way. Yes, that would be me.
And I know. And
don't hurt yourself, pat yourself on the back too much.
Listen, I've got that covered down the line. And there's, listen, he has shown some ability and potential. And there's still some growth to go. But we've all kind of wondered if he'd have that light bulb moment. And I just wonder, Mark, on that opening drive of the second half on 2nd and 7, he hit Johnny Wilson for a 22-yard slant route, and he took a hit by 2 blitzers, and he seemed like after that play, Tate was a different guy in that game. Just your assessment on Tate and getting thrown in there, and what you think of his potential moving forward.
Well, Mike said in his press conference he knew he was going to play like that because he's seen it. And how many times as coaches and as players have we heard you play like you practice? And they say it all the time because it's true. And if nobody knows them better than those guys that are with them every day, that watch them perform every day. And if they have confidence in them, then you know what, I do too then. Sometimes though, listen, he got thrown into a situation that couldn't have been any tougher, right? I mean, he went in on the spur of the moment in a game that was back and forth, where their defense was giving us a lot of problems. It was a situation that, any young quarterback, for your first real action with the game on the line in that situation, that's tough for anybody. And for him to pull it off and make the plays that he made and throws that he made, because listen, they were coming after him. They were convicted to take away the running game. I want to give great credit to the coaching staff for the adjustments they made. We can get into that later, but and he executed. So the confidence he must have right now must be tremendous. And of course, his teammates say they've always had confidence in him, and that's awesome. So it's credit to him for how hard he's worked. And Coach Norvell always likes to talk about investment. Basically, he's saying you get out of it what you put into it. He's obviously put in the work.
Charlie,
also,
at various points. Go ahead, Charlie.
I'd like to just add, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand or know about Tate is he's very athletic. I've been to a couple of spring games, a couple of practices where he ran the ball better than he actually threw it at one point. And so that's something that a lot of people don't see and hadn't seen. But if he continues to get an opportunity, I think the third down that he made, the run that he made in the Louisville game, is very indicative of what he's capable of doing if need be. And so, as I say, he's very athletic.
Yeah. Charlie, you've probably been at various times in your careers, you've been in the shoes of both Tate and Jordan. Young player, you were getting some reps in games, and then, Jordan gets thrust into this game. Tate gets thrust into this game late in the second quarter. Starts out, with some adversity with the interception, then it comes back and has a great second half, or solid second half. How does his performance in Louisville boost his confidence, and maybe more importantly, what does it do for the way that his teammates feel about him?
Well, I wasn't in the same boat as Tate, meaning I didn't get thrust into a job. Actually, when I played, I was the starter. Like, that was my first real game action, and so it very similar in that stance where I got thrown into being a starter with no experience, and it's tough, because sometimes you're trying to figure it out on the run. And I think he did a really good job of hitting the throws that he needed to hit with pressure in his face. And he made some mistakes as well. And that's going to happen when you don't have that game experience. But when it's all said and done, both of the quarterbacks were prepared. And I can't state that any more than, anyone else. But, when you're prepared to play, you can go out and do great things because you've seen it in practice, you watched it on film, and they both were prepared to play, and it showed. And so that's something that, when I'm talking to them or texting them, I'm always encouraging them about, doing those extra things to get prepared. And when your time comes, step up and make plays. And so I was so happy for Tate, when he did get his opportunity, because he told me, he's like, hey, I'm ready. And if I get a chance, I go in and do my best. And I was happy to see him, break through.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are happy for him. He's, people on social media have been hard on him. Comes in and has a successful appearance in this game, leads his team back to victory. Charlie, as Mark alluded to, he's not a finished product. He's getting a lot of people that are going to pat him on the back this week. He's kind of one of the big men on campus, and deservedly slow, right? But what you've mentioned that you're in contact with all the quarterbacks. What kind of advice do you give him as he goes into this week? And right now we're going to assume that he's probably playing, right? We saw Jordan on crutches and a boot. Now that may be just that might have been precautionary, but what advice would you have for Tate going into this week if he is going to play?
Well, of course he will. If he's the starter, he's going to get more reps. I think they give him a lot of reps in practice as the backup, just in case. Anyway, but he'll get more reps with the first team, and I don't think he's going to do anything different. I think he's been doing what he needs to do to be prepared to play. I've seen him in high school. His highlight film in high school was very similar to the throws that he made, the slants that he made, the deep balls. He did all that in high school. He's a coach's son, so that goes a long ways into how you prepare and how you compete and all those types of things. And so I don't see him doing anything different from a preparation standpoint. The only difference would probably be is he'll get more reps, which is a good thing.
Mark, obviously, I think early on in the game, Florida State was having success throwing the ball. I think they kind of stuck with that. Both you and I were surprised that they only ran the ball 11 times in the second half. But offensively, just talk about the adjustments you saw Mike and Alex make as they went into the second half, either because of Tate or because of what they were seeing defensively from Louisville.
Yeah, so the first half, they only ran it 11 times, and we looked at each other. That's, you wish it would have been more, but we were having so much success. But when I went back and looked at it, all those screens they threw when we're in 3 wides, those were RPOs. The line was blocking the run, and the numbers in the box were dictated that we had better matchups outside. So, we threw those screens, and we probably threw 4 or 5 of those, and that was the RPO play. So those were called runs too. So you figure really they had more runs called than they actually ran, right? So that was the plan. The plan was, Louisville's defense was going to try to take away the run. They're going to stack the box. They were going to try to disguise things, and we were going to try to get the matchups where we could get them. And so that was the RPO game. And we were successful. We stayed in front of the chains. We were able to put ourselves in position for Jordan to make some of those great throws that he made, the longer throws. And some of those were play action too. So, but then that started to bog down a little bit. And then Tate came in the game. And so coming into the second half, and, I said this Friday night that the quarterback best friend is a strong running game. And of course, we have 3 very talented running backs. And so what they ended up doing was we ended up going, which is my favorite formation, 2 tights, 2 wides, 1 back. All right. So in other words, what that did was that's a strong running formation. It's like going into I backs basically. But what it does is it balances the offense, especially when you have, a tight end on each side and a wide receiver on each side. That forces the defense to balance, but it also covers the gap, right? So with 2 tight ends on each side of the line of scrimmage, now you have 8 gaps to protect. If you have a front 7, now you got to walk down to safety to cover that other gap, which is they were doing that anyways. So now we just kind of evened it out, even the numbers out to execute the running game better. So now what they did was the RPO, instead of the screen, was now the skinny post to the receivers. So, that 8th defender was looking at the line. He's keen on the line. When that line fires out and that backer starts running downhill, he's screaming downhill. Tate takes the ball, zips it to Johnny Wilson on the skinny post. That first one, that was an RPO with the skinny post, right? And then then we hit the play action on the long post, the long one to Johnny again. And then we had a couple pass interferences on the same thing. So a great adjustment to try to even the numbers up, protect Jordan running the ball, and giving him easy throws to make, because we're making those safeties play the run. And they were going to do that anyways. I mean, they were going to do it whether we had, a tight end in the game or 3 wides in the game. So we just made it easier for us. The other part of that is when the game was on the line and we had to make first downs in that 4-minute offense, when we got the ball with 4 minutes left, had to make some first downs. Still in the same formations, running the ball. Man, they had 9 in the box. 9 in the box. Great job. Dimitri Emmanuel, Maurice Smith, and even Jazz a couple times on some of those runs did a really nice job on that first and even second level. But here's the third level guys sitting in there, and our backs did what they're supposed to do: make guys miss, run through arm tackles and make big runs. Benson with a big run, Ward with a big run, and then even Told Phillies on his touchdown was the same kind of thing. It was that same formation, it was a free guy. I mean, he outran that guy. That guy took a bad angle. He kind of slow stepped him and then accelerated right past him, and that's what a great back does. That's what makes it so exciting, is that as an offensive line, you don't have to block everybody. You block the ones you're supposed to block. It's his job to make those second and third level guys miss, and that's what they did. So great adjustment, second half, protect your quarterback, rely on your playmakers, both on the outside and your running backs. And they did a great job of it.
Well, I want to talk, we haven't even brought up Johnny Wilson, who had 7 catches for 149 yards and probably the best single game performance by Florida State receiver in some time, Bob.
Maybe since a Kelvin Benjamin, Rashad
Yes.
Green type of game. It was really, really huge. 6'7" is a matchup nightmare. I think we saw this a lot in camp. And there were times, Pat, where you and me and Kurt were saying, are we building up a young man who hasn't played a game for Florida State yet? And I think you're starting to see those moments where Johnny Wilson can line up against a corner and win that one-on-one matchup. And not to knock Jarvis Brown, he is a good cornerback, but he did circle this game on the calendar. I think he did get what was coming to him, which was a really tough matchup that is tough to win.
Well, pun intended, FSU whited it out for him on his calendar. There's no doubt about that. Charlie, just a question on what – oh, he's – okay. Just, Mark, what's your take on what Johnny Wilson has done for this offense and how good or how comforted was Tate Rodemaker on Friday night by having Johnny Wilson to throw to?
Well, obviously, just his size alone makes him a matchup problem. But he's not just a big guy. He's pretty smooth. So the question on him was, could he make the catches, the tough catches? And last Friday night he did. And his catch radius, by virtue of his size, is just so huge, especially vertically, as evidenced by the touchdown pass. That was just a well-placed ball that only he could get, and he went up and got it and was able to get his feet down. Catching the ball and tracking the ball downfield was important. That's got to be such a comfort to a quarterback to know that if I just put the ball in a good spot away from the defender, his catch radius and his ability is enough that he can make the catch. It doesn't have to be a perfect throw necessarily; it just has to be away from the defender. That's a great comfort for a quarterback. To go ahead and cut it loose with confidence. So yeah, what a weapon. I mean, he plays at this level consistently through the year. We have something here for sure.
Hey, Mark, I do want to ask you this question. Mike Norvell has talked about his offense is offense is made for playmakers, right? I think that's probably true of any offense, right? But we've seen the return of the big play, particularly this year. We saw it with the flea flicker for a touchdown against LSU. FSU had 14 plays on Friday night that accounted for 409 of its 455 total yards, 7 pass plays for 220 of the 266, and then 7 run plays for 173 of 189. Just talk about the big playability of the offense, and then I want this kind of a second question: is that a sustainable model for FSU with 409 of your yards, 455 yards coming off 14 of the other 50 plays went for 46 yards. So
yeah,
in one way it's a positive, right? Another thing, you got some things to.
Well, here's the deal. As an offense, we give people a lot of problems, right? We got running backs that can make plays, offensive line that's playing better. We got a quarterback that's a dual threat quarterback, and even Tate, as Charlie alluded to, has the ability to run if need be. We've got now wide receivers on the outside that have demonstrated some really great playmaking ability. We have an inventory of plays and formations and personnel groups that give you problems. So is it sustainable? Yes, because we give defenses a lot of problems, and we have enough of inventory of plays and players that, once the defense declares what their plan is, we can adjust. And we have the ability to adjust. So to answer your question, I think it is sustainable. When you're game planning, you're anticipating how a defense is going to play you based on their history, based on their scheme, based on their philosophy, and you try to match that with your players and your scheme, obviously, right? But when it comes down to crunch time, or a time to where it's an important down or important play. It was again I always give these Coach Bowdenisms, but one of them is in important times think of players, not plays. In other words, how can we get the matchup we want with either personnel, formation, motion, whatever, to get the guy we want on the guy we want him against, and can we take advantage of that? And it looks like when Mike says this is an offense made for playmakers, that's what he's talking about. We have the ability to adjust. We have the ability to formation. We have the ability to get the matchups we want in order to get the result that we want.
Yeah, and of course, we'd be remiss without talking about the performances of Trayshawn Ward, 10 carries for 126 yards, and Trey Benson, 10 carries for 70 yards. And FSU is starting to develop depth at wide receiver. Besides Johnny having 7 catches, 5 receivers, Bob, had 2 catches apiece. Just before we go to break, what are your thoughts on the receiving corps as a whole?
I think there's a lot of competition there. I know a lot of people are asking, Deuce Spann, was he not playing for a reason? Darian Williamson was playing for a reason. He looked great in practice. Yep. Malik McClain had that great touchdown catch back corner of the end zone from Jordan Travis. That was another good play by a young receiver. We've seen some good moments from him. So I think it's good to see competition is fueling all of those guys. And that's what we're going to see moving forward is just high quality play from the receivers. And one note on Trayshawn Ward, that was his best game against an FBS opponent. He had 100-plus yards against Duquesne, but this was a really, really good game for Trayshawn. Had that big breakaway run. Some good holes opened up by the offensive line there. Well, hey, we're just getting started on the offense. Let's take a quick break here. 30 seconds to hear from Alumni Hall. We'll come back, just getting rolling. We'll talk about the defense.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall.
We're back in the Osceola studio. We move on to defense. Apologies, we've had some Zoom issues with Charlie Ward. We'll get him back on here in a couple weeks when we have some time to bring him in and talk maybe about Tate, maybe about Jordan. We'll see. But now defense is the focus.
Well, Charlie has always been elusive. I am not shocked at all that Charlie escaped the show, but we do want to thank him for staying in the pocket for a little while and visiting with us. But what's that?
If you thought Malik Cunningham was tough to bring down.
Yeah, he's the OG elusive quarterback, right?
That's right. He is the OG of elusive quarterbacks. And we're going to talk a lot about it. Another elusive quarterback. Mark, we're going to move over to the defensive side of the ball. Again, just like for the offense, it was an imperfect game. And that ended perfectly. And we're going to go through all of it. Florida State gave up 290 yards in the first half, 205 in the second. Played much better. Malik Cunningham was ran for 127 yards on the night, but was 13 of 18 in the first half, passing for 148 yards and just 8 of 16 for 95 yards. Number one, let's talk about your overall assessment of the defense for the entire game, and then go into what you liked that Adam Fuller and his defensive staff did from an adjustment standpoint as they went into the second half. And again, gave up almost 100 less yards in the second half.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was obvious by the plan. They were ultra concerned about Cunningham's ability to run the football. We talked last week about, do you implement a spy? How do you handle them? Do you play zone? Do you play man? I mean, there's obviously a lot of concerns about a quarterback with that kind of talent. What do you want to take away? And it was obvious we wanted to really try to take away his legs. So early in the game, we had Kalen DeLoach spying him, and I think he was pretty much the spy the whole game. He did it from the end line of the scrimmage, evidenced by the very first play where he tried to run a naked boot, and he was right there. The problem with that is we were playing zone behind it. We were playing, looked like some kind of, 2 deep, 4 deep, 2 safety look behind it. And what you saw Kalen kind of hanging around the line of scrimmage on past plays, and where Malik Cunningham was hurting us a little bit was on those curl routes or those crossers that were directly behind him because he was out of position to cover, right? He was close to the line of scrimmage. And so there's that little hole in between the safety and the corner that he wasn't there to fill because he was spying the quarterback or he was just a little bit out of position, a little bit late getting there. And that's where they kind of, got a few of those little curl routes, those crossers, were kind of hurting us. And then, oh, by the way, even though when he did decide to run, I think Kelly was probably 1 out of 3 on getting him. I mean, he had him dead to rights and Malik just either outran him or, he juked him or whatever, right? And that was always the thing that you concerned about. I mean, I don't know who else on our defense you would put on him. He was probably the best choice unless you wanted to put a Keen Dunn or somebody in there, but I don't know that, he would have done any better, right? So that was, the problems early in the game. And then, honestly, I'm just going to be honest here, I don't know. Maybe it's because we were so scared of him running that the rush was just so controlled, right? We were so controlled about gap control that there wasn't a whole lot of pressure. That was a problem. And in consequence, look, their scheme is tough, and they got a senior and laden upperclassman laden offensive line, and that scheme is tough because they get you running sideways, with that stretch scheme. And when they get you running sideways and everybody's screaming one direction, all it takes is one little seam for a guy to come through. Then you got a one-on-one, and those backs were falling forward. They were gaining yards after contact. It was really frustrating, thinking, when we're getting physically handled here, and we were for a time, as evidenced by the yards we had in the first half. And I think part of it too, I'm gonna be honest here. The effort chasing the ball wasn't 100%. It wasn't just 11 guys screaming the ball. Sometimes there was a loaf here or a loaf there that, if somebody just ran a little bit harder for a little bit longer for the whole time, I'll give you an example. The screen that scored, that first screen that scored, if Josh Farmer is sprinting the whole time, he catches that guy before he scores, And, the one thing that really used to burn me up, and I know it burned your father up, and I know it burns Odell up, is that, when guys are running to the ball kind of 3/4 speed, and then a guy breaks the tackle, and then they speed up, right? Because everybody thinks, oh, we got him, and then he pops out of there, and then everybody accelerates. There was a lot of that. So, look, when it came down to time, though, you saw the intensity and the sense of urgency pick up, especially in the fourth quarter. So, the other adjustment that was made is we played a little bit more man coverage, in fact, a lot more man coverage. And we still spied Deloach, but now the safety was trying to fill that hole. And it was a little more of instead of a 2-safety look where they rotate in. I don't know if it was a man robber look or it was more just a cover 1 look where they brought the safety up. But anyways, they started chasing the crossers, and so you saw a lot of those 2-yard crossing, they catch it and we tackle them right away. So we were really closer to the crossers. The short passes, we were, corners were a little tighter, played a little more man under kind of stuff. So they adjusted during the course of the game. It ended up being really effective. So, credit to them, credit to the guys for, executing when they had to execute when it was really time to do so.
Now, were you surprised with the fact that they were very, as you said, they were very dedicated to the rush lanes, right? Trying to make sure they stayed in their gap integrity. Were you surprised that maybe they didn't bring more pressure, a blitzer, whether it be the nickel corner or the linebackers, and maybe even force him to the short side of the field, or maybe more importantly, to his left?
Yeah, I saw one corner blitz that I can remember off the short side. I remember one down of getting in a bear front that I can remember. I didn't see it often. I can only remember one, even after having rewatched it. So where I said on offense, we give people a lot of problems on offense based on our personnel and formation. On defense, we didn't give them a lot of problems. We kind of lined up the same way just about every time. We didn't give them a lot to look at, think about. Again, I think a lot of that is we're just scared to death of Malik Cunningham, and rightly so. So we got to figure that out because he's not going to be the only running quarterback we're going to play this year. Now, he might be the fastest one for sure. I don't think Anthony Richardson is near as fast as he is, and I don't know that DJ Ugalele is a fast running quarterback. He's a physical guy, but they won't be the only running quarterbacks we see. So we need to figure this out and figure out how is best for us as a defense to play these guys, and they're probably different for each one. But I don't want to see that guy again. That's for sure.
Yeah, listen, I think, and Bob, I'll ask you this question too. If I had told you before this game started that Malik Cunningham would throw for 243 yards and Louisville would run for 252, would you have thought Florida State win the ball game?
Yeah, no, we were saying all week, make Malik Cunningham a passer, and that's your route. I mean, I was stunned at times at how successful he was as a passing quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah.
He did not. He looked much more confident than he did against UCF. And quite honestly, I thought Florida State was just as talented, if not more so, than UCF's defense. Mark, what were your thoughts? I thought if Malik Cunningham had that game, Florida State's chances would be somewhat lessened. And to their credit, they fall through it.
The reason was the turnovers, right? The reason was turnovers, and we got the fumble down when they're getting ready to score. Obviously, the turnover at the end. I think we got a pick, didn't we? I can't remember. But there were some turnovers there that were really key, and some fourth down stops that were really key. So opportunistic defense was the order of the day. Made plays at critical times when we had to have them, and that's what gave us the chance to win, because they were moving up and down the field. But we were able to take advantage of some mistakes that they made.
Well, it is a bottom line business, but and this is a defensive question because they were impacted probably more so than the offense, even though you lost your best offensive playmaker in Jordan Travis, but you were without Fabian Lovett, who was out with an injury. I don't even think made the trip, and then of course you lose Jared Verse for the majority of the game, and not to mention you had, I think Bethune was out at least a series, if I'm not. But how are you impressed with the defense able to put together a winning effort despite being out? Jared Verse, other than Tate Bethune, has been your most disruptive and productive player. And then I've got another question for you about somebody we didn't see as much as we thought we were going to see him, but just talk about how FSU's defense was able to overcome that, the loss of both Fabian and Jared.
Well, I think that's a credit to our depth, obviously. Whereas in the past, you lose a top line guy, the gap between the top line guy and the next guy was just huge. And as a result, the production dropped consequently, that amount. So the gap is not as huge, and that's a good thing. We've got obviously more depth. So guys are working, they're earning their right to get on the field. So that's impressive. And look, next man up is a real thing, because football is a war of attrition through the course of the season, and to be able to weather that, you're going to have guys that are able to be productive in those spots. And so, good job by the coaches for preparing those guys. Good job by those guys putting in the work to be productive and carry out their assignments. But you know what? They're second team for a reason. Usually, you don't want your best guys out. We hope we get them back, because again, it's a long year. We're only on game 3, and the injury list is piling up, and so it's really going to test us. And to be fair, it's going to be the same for everybody else too. It just seems that for us in the past couple of years, it's really hit us hard, and as a result, it really has dropped our production on both sides of the ball.
Well, I've got a question for both you and Bob. You and I ask ourselves this question multiple times. Where's number 6? We didn't see Dennis Briggs quite as much as we thought we'd see him, particularly given the fact that Fabian was out of the ball game and Dennis has lined up at tackle and in for his career. Bob, were you surprised that he was not in the game more?
I don't have a great answer here. I think you're kind of scrambling to figure out where your personnel best fits, because the drop-off from Fabian, as Mark was saying, there is a significant drop-off. This wasn't probably Jarrett Jackson's most memorable games, and then a return performance at Louisville, a place where he started his career. I'm sure that's one where he won't, feel proud of. Mark talked about Josh Farmer. This was not this was a learning experience for him. There were some moments that he'd like back to. I think you need to look to your veterans in moments like these, and Dennis Briggs is a guy who we know can be disruptive on the interior. We think he can be disruptive on the edge. I think they're going to take a long look at personnel this week, and they're going to know, whereas we may not know, is Jared Verse available? Is Fabian Lovett available? They're going to start asking hard questions. Who's available, and how do we start rolling and preparing for BC?
Yeah. Mark, your thoughts on Dennis?
Yeah, you got to ask yourself, if the thought is if Levin's going to be out an extended period of time, and are we weakening two positions by taking Dennis Briggs out of the end and throwing him inside, or are we weakening two positions? I thought he would be more of an impact guy on the outside. And just maybe this wasn't a good matchup for him this game for whatever reason. And again, it's still early in the season. I'm not giving up on Dennis Briggs. I don't think anybody is. But
no,
you're right though. He's an older guy who has lots of game experience. Who's been proven to be disruptive. So who knows what's going on.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to ask is both of us mentioned it to each other during the game, and then of course what struck me the more I thought about it in the press box was, hey, Dennis has been very good at defensive tackle before. In fact, they were more than impressed with him last year before he got hurt. And so I was just a little bit surprised about that. Now, two guys we're not really surprised about at this point in their careers, probably one more so than another. Kevin Knowles continues to make plays. Bobby has done so, sometimes in not winning efforts, but he's a guy that had a very good game against Florida last year and played really good towards the end of the season. Obviously makes the game-winning interception. Talk a little bit about what you saw from Kevin.
Yeah, I think Kevin emerged to me probably about middle last year, that North Carolina game. He was defending Josh Downs, the North Carolina star receiver, and really Downs had a good day, but Kevin held his own. Then you see him evolving, improving, and that catch at the end of the game, that was Sunday wide receiver quality with 2 feet down on the sideline to get that interception. And I think it's that takeaway mentality that Adam Fuller has instilled. And look, there are going to be criticisms of Adam Fuller for many reasons, and nobody wants to give up 31 points. But the Adam Fuller mantra is mission takeaway. He doesn't even want to call them turnovers. They are takeaways. They are opportunities for the defensive players to take possessions and put the ball back in the hands of your offense. I think Kevin Knowles is a guy that we're gonna be happy watching moving forward.
Well, I do want to ask you about this guy, Mark. During the course of any particular game at Florida State, on the video boards comes on this big time players make big time plays in big time games. For the second consecutive game, a guy that I had high expectations for coming out of high school, just based on what his coach, a former Florida State linebacker, Brian Allen, had to say about him, that this kid, when he got to Florida State, is the kind of kid that would be able to play on the great Florida State teams. But Shaheem Brown blocked a field goal, extra point against LSU to win the game, and then his hand is all that's in the way between this game being totally different and this being a totally different conversation. He makes I believe he dove for the ball. I think it was out route to number 4 from Malik at about the 50, 45-yard line, and looked like he had nothing between him but him and the end zone except for Shaheem's left or right hand. Tell us your thoughts on Shaheem, and are we making too much of a big deal out of making essentially 2 game-winning plays?
I don't think so. I mean, look, from where we were sitting, when you saw it happen, that receiver was turning upfield, and like I said during the reaction video, he was getting ready to pose and do the Dion, shimmy down the sideline for the touchdown. He already had that in his mind, and so Shaheem took a chance, but he made the play, and some guys just have a knack for making big plays, and it gets to a point where you can't ignore it anymore, right? Once is maybe an accident, twice, maybe you got keeps happening. Now it's a pattern, right? And some guys just have that ability. So, I'm sure they're going to keep throwing him out there, and try to put him in situations where we can utilize that ability that it looks like he has. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Of course, he's got to earn the right, in practice and show guys during the course of the week that he's ready to do that. So looking forward to see him in the future.
Well, there were a couple other guys, Bob, that had strong games. Obviously, Tatum Bethune and Akeem Dent tied for the lead in tackles, at least from the press box stats, for 10 apiece. I know what the look on Mark and I's face in the press box when Tatum went out. Kind of what were your thoughts when you saw Tatum go out, and how relieved were you when he came back in?
I think you're thinking of worst case scenarios as you're watching a game, and when Tatum goes down, I think, okay, this one really hurts because you don't have linebacker depth, and your replacement is nowhere near as good as Tatum Bethune, just from an experience production standpoint. And thankfully, when he went to the sideline, I thought wrist, hand,
Yep.
Maybe that's an injury that he can come back pretty soon from. And thankfully, I think he missed a drive or two.
Yep.
So good to see him back.
Yeah. I was hoping it was Stinger, but Mark, what were your thoughts? I mean, we didn't really talk about it because we're in the press box, but both of us kind of pushed our seat back for a second and said, "Uh-oh."
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of positions that we didn't want to see guys get hurt, and that's one of them. The other one was quarterback, and that seemed to work out okay. But, let me tell you something. That Bob's right there is not great. We've already lost Amari Gaynor. You got Caleb Lowe, Lundy. After that, I don't know. It's slim pickings after that. So, yeah.
Yep. Well, a couple other guys that had really good games. Renardo Green was very productive, 8 tackles by, like I said, press box stats. The coaches will be a little bit different. Kalen DeLoach, you mentioned, Mark, 5 tackles, including 1 sack and 2 TFLs. And then Derek McClendon seemed to be very active at defensive end without verse in, obviously. Bob, anybody else stand out to you on defense?
Yeah, I thought McClendon was a guy who really stepped up for sure. That was one who seemed to be, making a lot of plays. Renardo's had kind of an up and down start to this year. We've seen him, give up some touchdowns, but I think he made that big stick in the LSU game. That was kind of a moment where Jaden Daniels felt Renardo Green. And so that's out there on film that a guy like Renardo can do that. This isn't the kind of game that the defensive players are going to be very proud of when they watch the film. But I think going back to the original point, when you're down Fabian Lovett, when you're down Jared Verse, when you've seen all the pieces aren't quite there, you're going to say, wow, we did that. I think the defensive players can say that for real.
Yeah. Well, I had going into the season, I had this as the most important game on Florida State's schedule because it was going to do one of two things. Coming to and luckily for Florida State and for us, it was you had to validate that win against LSU. And they did. They validated, and what they also did was validate that they can handle success, and within that game handle adversity, and come back and win a ball game on the road when you're the only game in town. Everybody's watching. But Mark, you did so without Jordan Travis, without Jared Verse, without Bless Harris, without Fabian Lovett, without a healthy Amari and Cooper, and then you lose Robert Scott at some point during the game. All right, so this would have been a confidence booster for Florida State had they won with all those guys, right? You would think. They had something to prove against Louisville. They've been beaten twice. They want, you want to get off to a good start in ACC play. It's first conference game. Does this team have any more confidence or more confidence coming out of this game because of who it won it with? Because you were without 5, front top tier players, big producers for you. Is that? I mean, how? You don't want to see. You want these guys to come back. You don't want anybody to get hurt. But is there elevated confidence and belief in this team or within this team because of the guys that were missing and still being able to come back and win?
Of course there is. I mean, look, winning is a habit. So is losing. It's a mentality. It's a get it done mentality. It's a refuse to lose mentality. And it's a group collective. It's group psychology. It's all of that. And so it means a lot when you lose guys, a bunch of guys, and as a collective, as a team, you have the confidence to go in and pull it off. And that's what this proves. It proves that we can win games and do the things it takes to win games. You get turnovers. You make the plays when they're there to make. You take advantage of your opportunities when they present themselves, and it becomes a habit. So that's what this game to me is about. It's about the mentality of refusing to lose and the mentality of playing winning football. And look, we were far from perfect. I mean, honestly, offensive line didn't play great. They played good in the fourth quarter. They played really well, but up until that point, they were just kind of hit and miss. Of course, the kicking game right? That's
Yep.
got to get better. Leaving points on the board, that's not winning football. Taking advantage of turnovers and flipping the field and not giving it right back. I mean, that's complementary football. That's one of your favorite things, right, Pat?
Yep.
So there's still places to improve. And in spite of all that, to still win the game, number one, it gives coaches something to really coach and make corrections and get on guys and keep them motivated. It gives guys, the ability to look in the film, and I can play a lot better, and what can we accomplish? So now it becomes, what can we accomplish if we do everything we can do? If we play a perfect game, what can we accomplish? And that's, to me, a strong attitude and hope that you get moving forward.
Bob, did it change your thoughts on the team, opinion on the team, expectations moving forward with the cast of characters that ended up finishing that game with?
Yeah, I think I went into the season thinking this is a 7-5 team just based on how they practiced in the spring and in the camp. And then you look at how guys fight through an adverse situation on the road at night. Louisville, tough place to play. I think it really shows the development and the growth of a third-year program.
Yeah.
We've been waiting to see, is this team – I know everybody talks about the lose big, lose close, win big. I'm still looking at the crawl, walk, run
Right.
to where are some of these guys. And we are seeing player development is kind of between walk and run for a lot of them.
Right.
And that's really a real positive moving forward, because we don't know on Monday what Mike Norvell is going to announce for injuries.
Right.
We don't know, is Fabian Lovett going to be out short-term, long-term? Same questions with Jordan Travis, Robert Scott, Winston Wright. When are we going to see Winston Wright?
Yeah.
We have a lot of questions, but we do know that the guys are practicing hard, and they're taking those opportunities that are in front of them from a competitive standpoint.
Well, yeah, and listen, this team, we said, I think I've already said it once to open up the show, we thought this team enjoyed playing together. It looks like it does. We thought this team was starting to turn the corner. It looks like it has. Now, there's still a long way to go. You've got Boston College and Wake Forest at home, then go to NC State, then come back to Clemson, and Miami's not too far down the road. So the schedules, listen, they're still we don't want to get too far in front of our skis, right? But this team does seem to have some of the characteristics that we thought it had in camp. And Mark, what do you see as far as evolution in Mike's third year through the first quarter of this season?
Well, it was all about culture change from the time he got here. It was all about turning over the roster, getting players that could play, and changing a culture and a mentality and toughen us up. So in year 3, looks like we've made tremendous strides in that direction. So, that's what you want. That's why we hired him. It was hard. It's been a hard journey. For all of us that love this program, it was hard to watch for the last 5 years, and so, to have the success we're having, it's easy. I want to get carried away. But part of you still kind of want to hold back a little bit and say, you know what, let's hold our horses a little bit. There's still a long way to go. We haven't arrived yet.
Right.
But man, we sure 2 years ago, all we wanted to do was be competitive. Whether we won or not, we just wanted to be competitive. And now we're beyond competitive, that we're actually winning the games. And that's such a joy for us as that are, that love this program and have so much invested in this program. It means so much for us. So, it took a lot of energy from our staff and from Mike. And that's why I was always glad to have Mike, because he's got that energy and he's got that, resilience and that focus, to drive the same messages home. You got to work your way through it, and he said it Friday night in a press conference, and it's something I've always said too, and I've always heard for a long time. Hard work doesn't guarantee you results, but it puts you in position to get the results. And that winning is a learned thing. And so, in year 3, we're trending up, obviously.
Yeah, and listen, I think part of it, we've done this is our 4th year doing Seminole Sidelines, and there have been Sundays, Bob and Mark, where we have literally dreaded these things. I mean, they were hard. Willie's last year was extremely difficult, as was Mike's first year. We started seeing some light in the tunnel towards the end of last year, even though it wasn't always on the scoreboard, and we knew part of last year was not going to be on the scoreboard. But to your point, Mark, 4 years ago, we wanted a team that compete, right? We just wanted somebody that would compete regardless of what was on the scoreboard. Now what we have in Mike Norvell's 3rd year is a different culture than we had in 2019. And it is a team that fought through adversity time and time again in a game that they did not play anywhere near their best game outside of the first quarter, maybe with Jordan Travis, right? Other than that, there were issues, but if they overcame them, it's a bottom line sport. But I was going to say all that to say this: how much more fun is Seminole Sidelines to do this year than it has been the previous 3 seasons?
It's always fun when you win, right?
Yeah, I think we're hearing that from fans, from players like Mark. They're proud. They're proud of the team that they're watching, the effort, the energy's out there. And Mike Norvell was 0-6 in September 2 years prior. Now he's 2-0. The August game against Duquesne. He's got a chance to go 3-0 in September and then get into the meat of that ACC schedule. I think it's a good time to take a break. We're going to hear from the FSU ticket office, and then we'll get into a Boston College preview with Pat and Mark.
Hey, Seminole fans. Tickets to Florida State football games are now on sale. Right now, you can pick up single game tickets, 3-game packs, and season tickets for the 2022 season. Home games include Florida, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Boston College, Louisiana, and Duquesne. Have fun this football season with your friends and family, all the while knowing your ticket purchase is funding FSU's success. Call your ticket rep today at 850-644-1830 or visit Seminoles.com. That's Seminoles.com.
All right, we're back and wrapping up our Seminole Sidelines. We're going to move over to Boston College. The Eagles picked up their first win of 2022 over Maine from the FCS on Saturday. And I'm not sure Maine and Duquesne would be a great game, Pat, but good on BC for getting the win and getting in gear there after some tough losses to Rutgers and Virginia Tech. It has not been the most BC-looking team. We haven't seen great offensive line play. We haven't seen great running game. What have you seen so far from BC?
Well, I see a program that is struggling mightily. We thought last year under Jeff Hafley that BC was a program that was on the move up, right? They lost 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen from a season ago. Then their best offensive lineman, who I had initially voted for as an all-ACC pick, tore his ACL in summer workouts, and it's pretty much turned into Phil Jakovic, the quarterback, and Zay Flowers show. They are 105th in the nation in scoring offense, and that includes Maine in these stats. They're 130th and have 131 teams in rushing offense. I don't think I'd ever think I'd say that about a Boston College team that prides itself on being one of the best producers of offensive linemen in college football. But it's pretty much, and they've been pedestrian on defense. They're about mid-pack in almost every category, but it's not the team that I think we thought we would see. They are definitively struggling. And listen, it is what it is. And Mark, these players, Florida State's players, know Boston College is struggling. You're coming off 2 very emotional, very high-profile wins, both on national television, both standalone games. You've watched Boston College a little bit. First of all, your thoughts on BC, and secondly, if you're in Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins and Adam Fuller's shoes, how do you approach this game this week?
Well, I mean, you guys already said it. This is the most un-BC-like team that I've seen in a little bit. I've watched them. And, when you think of BC, you think sound, strong offensive line play. You think of strong, big running backs. You think of quarterbacks that can, deliver the football, and a defense that's not flashy, but really sound and covers well. And, they're really hard to get yards against. And so far, that hasn't been the case. Now, we don't have to let them correct stuff this week. If I'm Adam Fuller and Mike Norvell, I'm want to jump all over them as quick as I can, and don't let them get any kind of confidence. Don't let them see any kind of light in the tunnel. Don't give them anything to hope for. You need to steal their soul, grind them into the ground, and make them just hang their heads as soon as you can. Because look, they've got nothing to lose right now. And, Zay Flowers, Jerkovic, they're good players. And if we're not careful, they may scheme some. They're smart too. Those coaches are smart coaches. They're going to find a way to scheme us. They're going to try to do some things, and we need to make sure that we snuff it out quick. So, they've got some dangerous players, but I think overall we're probably the better team right now, and we better show it. We better show it. And I anticipate it's going to be a tremendous atmosphere. I can't wait to get down there and just see the war chant and Chief Osceola and the band and everybody just going nuts. And an 8:00 game on top of it. We need to, as a fan base and as a team, we need to jump on them quick.
Yeah. Now I do want to kind of, before we go, we're going to wrap up here shortly, but you had kind of a fun moment and I enjoyed it too, but we kind of get this far away look, even though we do get to practice, but you're in the press box and it's kind of, I guess I don't think it's, I think antiseptic's the word I'm going to use. But I don't think it's the right word. But, so long story short, we get to watch all these games, and in the press box, you really don't get to feel any of the emotions. It's sort of soundproof. And, then we all, we think these games are static, right? We think that every play should go the way it's drawn up. And that's not the way it is in reality. We all know that game plans get changed in the middle of the game. But anyway, I digress. You and I got a chance to go down to the locker room, which is right across, by the locker room, to go to the press conference area for Mike Norvell. You're a former FSU player. You spent time coaching ball. I spent 10 years between South Carolina and South Florida. And, again, it's been a rough 3 or 4 season stretch for Florida State. And we got to pass by the locker room and hear that enjoyment and the laughter and the clapping and just the pure happiness. We don't get to see that a lot because, we're kind of isolated. As a former player and someone that now has helped us at the Osceola for 4 years and through some pretty lean times, how cool was that for you personally?
Oh, gosh. I said it Friday night. It was everything I could do not to make a right turn and go in there and start jumping around with those guys. I mean, it really was. I wanted to celebrate with them, because it means so much. I mean, look, they're my brothers because, we have shared experience, playing that game with the arrow on the side of your helmet. And so it means something to me personally, obviously, but I know what it means to them. And somebody told me a long time ago, especially when I got into coaching, you celebrate every win. You don't take winning for granted. You just don't. And, it was coming from Florida State. The time I came from Florida State, I'm like, yeah, whatever. We're going to win. We're always going to win. Winning's, it seems so easy looking back on it when in terms of, obviously we worked and stuff, but we just won, and then it doesn't happen. And you're like, man, this is harder than you think, especially when I went to South Carolina. And, we won a little bit and then we lost a lot. It's hard. It's hard to win. It is. We made it look easy for so long. So to hear them celebrate that, like I said before, winning is a habit. That's a feeling you chase, as a player, as a coach, you chase that feeling of, because you work so hard, man. Football's the only game where you work so hard to play one game, right? We've got 13 opportunities to go out there and show what we got. And each one means so much. So to answer your question, Pat, man, you just want to go in there and just celebrate with them, as a former player, as a fan, as somebody that just has so much invested in this program.
And Bob, I have one final question for you. There's several people, me included, thought Louisville was the most important game of the year for Florida State. Now that the next game becomes the most important game, and we readjust. But I thought coming off of LSU, it was a mighty big game, particularly needing to losing to Louisville 2 years in a row and being your first ACC game. But Mike Norvell's reaction was kind of different in that post-game press conference and most that I can remember. How did it strike you, his reaction? He beat the table, was very happy. He looked at that stat sheet and obviously knew it was not a perfect game,
Right.
but I don't think it stopped, certainly did not impede his happiness in the moment. Now, it probably did Sunday in the film meeting room, but anyway, just talk about how you reacted when you saw that response from him.
It was funny watching the video after the games. I'm watching it from home, and the camera's on him, and I'm not sure he even knew the camera was really rolling at that point. He's just staring at the stat sheet, and it doesn't look great in a lot of areas. But to know that you gut out that kind of win, and then with conviction, he says, I knew we could win with Tate Rodemaker. And when he said that, it was almost like he was defending Tate as well as his decision to not dip into the portal and try to grab somebody else too. It was that I knew we saw enough as a coaching staff to know that Tate was the guy, and to know that there are other guys on the roster who were the next guys who could step up too. So I think wins like these confirm what the coaches see on the field, and they know that deep down inside, it's in the players to do what they know they can do.
Yeah. Well, hey, it was. We could probably talk another 2 hours about this game. It was so crazy, and if Joel would let us, we probably would. But I think the production crew is ready to go home too. So again, Florida State 3-0, perfect start. Two really thrillers, and I'm starting to call them the cardiac knolls because it comes down. I mean, they got everybody's heart rate up every game. But BC 8:00, Doak Campbell Stadium. I believe it's Parents Weekend, so it should be a very good crowd, as Mark said. Mark will be joining us again. But Bob, any final thoughts? ACC 8 p.m. kickoff. Florida State currently favored by 15, and I have to think that Vegas 15, and that's with the injuries. So that would probably only go up if they knew what the status of Travis and Verse were, if they come back, of course. But any final thoughts as we get ready to end the show?
Yeah, this is fun. Let's keep it going, right? I think what's really cool is hearing from fans that you all are proud of this team and that you're coming back to Doak on Saturday. Ticket sales are brisk. Single season ticket sales are up. Flex packs are up. People want to come back to Tallahassee to see the Noles, and that's what we've been kind of waiting for these last couple of years, the excitement to build back up. And these are two wins that have really sparked a lot of enthusiasm with the fan base.
And by the way, the white uniforms are growing on me by the day.
If you want to know with the white uniforms, go with the icy whites, right?
Are we going to turn a white uniform at home team now? I'm for it. Hey,
I'm not there yet.
I'm not either, but listen, they did grow on me. The better they played in the second half, the better those uniforms look. But hey, I want to thank Bob. I want to thank Mark. I want to thank you guys for joining us. And we will be back next Sunday with a new Seminole Sidelines after Florida State takes on Boston College on Saturday night. Thanks for joining us.
Scalp them.